you have the big themes like stress and well-being, and also the good stuff like what's going on. But you can drill down into verbatim comments, and sometimes you find one comment from one employee in one theme. It could be well-being that encapsulates everything, and you're just scrolling through because you're just doing a bit of a deep dive to understand how people feel about a particular theme. Return to work, return to the office would be a good one at the moment. If you were trying to understand how people feel about it before you make your decisions, you'll see one comment and you look at it and you're like, that whole comment could become a marketing campaign. And it's like that. What's the saying? Like a picture becomes worth 1,000 words. It's like one verbatim comment by one person can sometimes encapsulate how 400,000 employees feel.
In episode 35 of the Employer Content Marketing Pod, I chat with Matthew Phelan. Matthew's co-founder of Happiness Index, and Matt and the team have built an established employee experience software platform for humans. Think employee engagement surveys taken to the next level. So what if you could use the most up-to-date sentiment of your employees in your employer marketing content? We chat about this and more in this episode. Let's get on with the chat. Hi Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. Got my coffee. I'm pleased that we're not recording video because you've seen the state of my office. I'm happy.
Yes, same. Yeah, mine's a bit of a storage room at the moment, temporarily. But yeah, so it's good to catch up. Know you're busy. Thanks very much. Happy Friday. Thought we'd start the Friday off with a bit of a chat. It'd be great to hear a bit about yourself and business, and then in particular, given what the business does, talk about how you can use data from your employees to create content that is true to the organisation, so that then when someone sees that content, considering joining an organisation, there are very few surprises when they join. So let's crack on with just telling us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a neighbour of Chris. I live in North London. By trade, I suppose I was a marketer, and it's very linked to what we're discussing today, which is, so I started out in digital marketing, and I was scaling a business called 4Ps, and we took this Richard Branson quote that said, customers don't come first, employees come first. But we were a digital marketing agency, so we were using data for everything. But then we realised, after we'd taken the Richard Branson quote as inspiration, but we created our own version of it, which was, we called it employee, customer, agency growth. So our mantra became, we will look after the employees, they'll look after the customers, and we will grow. And that's all types of growth, from personal growth to financial growth. And it sort of worked because we were growing in all levels, but we were data people that were used to testing assumptions with data. And we didn't have any data on whether that was true. So we went to see one of our clients, Caroline O'Keefe, who was unhappy with us. She was an unhappy client. And she said, you need a way of tracking this, to my business partner, Chris. And he came back and sat down with myself and our CTO and said, we need to track this. And I said, well, if we're going to track customers, we need to track employees, as in how happy they are. So Matt Stannard, our CTO, built a little bit of tech, really simple, just a couple of lines of code that tracked anonymously how happy our employees and customers were, to check if there was a correlation between the two. Now, for other data geeks like me, correlation doesn't equal causation. But at this point, we're just trying to see if there's a correlation. And then one of my team at the time, Ben Miller, turned around at a meeting and said, you should call that the Happiness Index. And then as we rolled it out, all our customers started asking for it. So we sold the digital marketing agency at the right point. And then rather than retire, we made possibly the best or worst decisions of our life to take all that money and invest it in this business called the Happiness Index, which sometimes in the last 12 months I've wondered whether it's the worst decision ever because of the pandemic and how tough it's been. But 6 days out of 7, I normally think it was a good idea that we've that we're full-time on the happiness index.
That's a good strike rate. Nice one. So how long have you been running for?
The business has been around for about 7 years as of a couple of weeks in a couple of weeks' time. But my business partner and I didn't join it until 2 years ago because we were running the other company. So I phoned up someone I knew, Tony Latter, who was a classic case of, and he's talked about this on my podcast, Happiness in Humans, which is, he was a classic 6-figure salary, best car out of all of us, but deeply unhappy. So I phoned him up and convinced him to quit his job, and for 1/3 of the business, he started the happiness index. So it was a good 4 years of Tony out there. He recruited my brother, running the business, and then we joined with a bit of extra cash and a bit more firepower a couple of years ago, which is why people suddenly like, wow, you guys are doing a load of stuff, but it's kind of, Tony's got more help. Tony and Pat have got more help now.
Yeah, nice one. And so, like, what are your core products? What do typically your clients buy off you?
So they buy an employee engagement and happiness platform, which sounds like a lot of words because to the rest of the world it's an employee engagement platform. But the reason we add happiness in is because most engagement platforms or engagement surveys forget to check these little things called emotions that we all have and make us human. So we come from a neuroscience background, so we look at the human being first, not the employee, and then work back from that. So essentially, if my sales team were here, they would say we help you visualize your culture.
Okay, nice. And I think for me, it's like when we've talked before, it's definitely made me think about, well, okay, you know, what's the connection with that and marketing. You know, so if you look at the classic thing of making sure that you have, you know, it's throughout the word authentic, but authentic content that you put out there, so when people do actually join, you know, they're joining for the right reasons and they stay for the right reasons because they are happy in what they do. I don't think it's too much to ask that more people in the world work in businesses that they enjoy, working jobs that they enjoy doing. I think that's, like with any relationship, is about making sure the match is right in the first place. So So in your view, kind of how can data be used to try and influence that marketing that is put out there by employers?
Well, if we go back, Chris, and look at brands as a starting point, and if we take product brands, and let's take someone like Heinz and baked beans. Most brands sort of emerge in the sort of Victorian era to build trust, because before a brand, if you were buying some baked beans or whatever was in that tin, you don't necessarily know whether what is in that tin is what said should be in that tin. But over time, if you keep buying that brand and it's the same quality of bean in that tin, you build loyalty with that brand, don't you? And then over time, you introduce it to your children and so on, and a brand is built. So I think essentially brands are about trust, right? And that's when you start with the product. But then when you think about a brand as everything that makes up a brand, like the people behind the brand and so on and so on, I think what data is on employees is really about the company and its brand, because I don't see anything different. I don't see any difference between culture and brand. I think they're the same thing. The only thing that's changed is if you treat your employees badly, it could become public now because of this thing called social media and the internet and things like Glassdoor. So I know I'm going a bit of a back history thing here, but I think employees are part of the ingredients that make up your brand, and that's whether you're consumer facing or not. Even if you're B2B, you're a law firm or whatever, whether you like it or not, your employees make the ingredients up of your brand. So now we've moved to a world of transparency, which is why you felt uncomfortable using the word authentic because it's used so much. we're in a more transparent world. So people, it's no good now just entering best companies to work for and say, oh, we look after our people, and then all the people who work there are like, well, we've won best companies to work for, but I hate working here.
Yeah.
Um, so so what I to answer your question, I just wanted to set the context. So I think data about how your employees feel um, can then be used to tell your brand story, because your employees are an incredible part of your story. And when you start linking it to how your employees feel and how your customers feel and how that's translated through, that's where I think the magic happens. The problem is we silo stuff, don't we? So we have the HR team, we have the marketing team, we have the brand team, when really we're talking about the same stuff. So employee data, we silo it, and we even do that at the happiness index. But really, we're just talking about the emotions around your brand. Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about what you have to offer and what you're giving your clients, because I think there is this thing about typically relying on the annual survey, employee engagement survey, and you're missing a really big opportunity to really get a sense of what the pulse is of the organisation, far more frequently, once a year, and clearly what you have to offer does that. And so I think for me, using the kind of data that you guys have access to, I think is really valuable from a marketing perspective, because if I think about the word clouds that you have on your software, look at the dashboard and see a word cloud, and there's a predominant word coming out there, I can delve into that word and see what's being said around that. Then actually that can help guide the content that is being created, because if someone is talking about let's say there's a trend around stress, for example, then actually there's potentially a whole host of conversations, whether it's blog posts, it's episodes on podcasts, or it's Zoom style conversations, or even an event that is around stress and dealing with stress.
Totally.
That stress may not be negative because actually it's being mentioned, but it's talking about how people are stressed, but how they deal with it themselves.
Yeah.
And also, how the company addresses it as well.
On that, Chris, for the listeners, I think you have the big themes like stress and well-being, and also the good stuff like what's going on. But you can drill down into verbatim comments, and sometimes you find one comment from one employee in one theme. It could be well-being that encapsulates everything, and you're just scrolling through because you're just doing a bit of a deep dive to understand how people feel about a particular theme. Return to the office would be a good one at the moment, if you were trying to understand how people feel about it before you make your decisions. You'll see one comment and you look at it and you're like, that whole comment could become a marketing campaign, and it's like that. What's the saying? Like a picture becomes worth 1,000 words. It's like one verbatim comment by one person can sometimes encapsulate how 400,000 employees feel. That's the size of some of our clients. So I'm totally in agreement with what you're saying.
And actually, think about it. You've come across them as well. I have as well. As those briefs that come in from clients, about for a campaign, and it's okay. This is the audience. These are the people we wanted to get, target. But also, so what's your unique selling, USP? I don't like that term. Is there that much uniqueness? I'm not sure. Apart from the individual experiences which are unique, but I think there's such value there in that data to put into a brief that is going, this is what it is like to work here.
Yeah.
And I just know in briefing sessions I've had over the years, having that kind of deep data, which is more than just focus group data, is so valuable. And actually, by having access to it all the time, this is why it's good to have this regularity of data that you guys provide. It means that actually, when it comes to any campaign that you do, you literally plug into that data
Yeah.
and you pull from it what you need to. And you're
Yeah.
right, you see a few comments, verbatums there, and actually, that in itself can really drive the focus of a campaign.
Yeah.
And it's sat on relevant data. It's all true.
Yeah, and I think all it is just understanding. It's just greater understanding of what's going on, and the best marketers deal in stories, don't they? Um,
Mm.
but if you've got the understanding first, there, it's why sometimes it's almost good to ban the word data because it puts people off. It's
That's
just
true.
understanding about how people feel, and then you can build out the stories because that's how people remember. That's how you engage with people. There's some the NHS that near us, Chris. If you go into, I think it's North Mid,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
rather than having "Don't smoke here" signs, they have verbatim comments from NHS staff that say things like, I'd really appreciate it if people could not smoke directly where I go out to get some fresh air. Because imagine you're in a ward and you're stuck in there all day, and the first exit point you get to, someone's having a cigarette. But I never would have thought of that. But when you go in as a patient, it makes you respect the employees there even more because you're seeing it from their point of view. Whereas you probably never consider that as a smoker. You just think, right, get outside, have a cigarette. And they're just saying, look, if you could just go a bit further for our team that are working flat out here, that would be really useful.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. It's kind of like a bit like with things like speeding, speed limits, where actually there's, I think in Italy they do, there are examples of there being smiley faces, and I've actually seen it here as well, where
Yeah, I've started to see
there's a
it.
smiley face or a sad face, which is trying to bring that kind of more emotion into it rather than the presentation of just a number,
Yeah,
which is I think a really good idea. Yeah, so I imagine, you've got to imagine if you're doing a massive shift as a nurse, and especially now, and literally going outside to really take a breath, literally, it's like simple as that. Then if
yeah,
you're maybe taking in a lung full of smoke, it's not good, is it? So
no,
it's a really good example, actually. I reckon if someone has access to this kind of regular feedback of their of what their employees are thinking, then I think there's certainly something where they've got literally a big part of the brief that they put to their agencies or put internally to their own
definitely.
teams.
Especially
Um,
if you think about the customer team, Chris. But if you've got information on how the customer team feel, a customer team in some of these big companies, like frontline staff, retail staff, as an example, they know the business and why people buy from the business better than anyone else.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
understanding how they feel and what makes them tick is massive for any customer or brand campaign or answering of a brief.
Mm, definitely. And actually, I think at its very basic level, it can be that you all of a sudden have quote fodder that you can put into your
Yeah,
marketing material. That can be an
absolutely.
absolute basic starting point, but it becomes so much more in terms of well planned out content that is really it's linked with content marketing, which is ultimately creating content that is going to help people first,
Yeah,
inspire them first, and you're going to sell to them second, which is
yeah,
I think really important.
totally.
Okay, great stuff. Well, thanks for the chat. Have a good rest of the day, and catch up soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris.
Thanks for listening, and if you enjoyed what you heard, then please feel free to subscribe, and it would be awesome if you could leave a review as well. It really does help.